The paper felt cold and heavy in my hands. The ownership transfer document. One final signature, a single stroke of the pen, and my life's work. Wyatt Construction, the company I built from the ground up here in Nevada, would pass to my son, Logan. Everyone thought I had already done it. Logan himself was sure of it. But every time I picked up the pen, something stopped me. Maybe it was the ghost of my late wife, Eleanor, whispering in my ear, "Wyatt, don't rush." A true legacy isn't about papers, but about character. Or maybe it was just the instinct of an old builder who knows you have to check the foundation before handing over the house. Just a week ago, everything seemed perfect. Logan threw me a lavish party to celebrate my retirement. Everyone was there. Our old friends, key employees, even the mayor of Reno stopped by for a moment. Logan stood on an improvised stage in a $5,000 suit, talking about legacy, about a new era for Wyatt Construction. He called me his hero, his mentor. The guests applauded, champagne flowed, and I stood there feeling a strange chill. His words were right. But his eyes... Logan's eyes held no respect for the past. There was only a hungry gleam for the future he believed already belonged to him. He had changed in recent years. After finishing business school, he returned to the company not as a student, but as a conqueror. He talked about aggressive strategies, risk optimization, and entering the Vegas market. I, an old engineer who still believed in the strength of concrete and a firm handshake, listened to him and felt a chasm growing between us. Eleanor always said, "Logan inherited your mind, but not your heart." Be careful, Wyatt. I used to dismiss it as a mother's anxiety. Now, standing in the middle of a crowd celebrating my departure, I understood how right she had been. When the party was over and I was alone in my office, I looked at the documents again. Everything was ready. The lawyers had checked every comma. Logan had even brought me my favorite Parker pen, the same one I had used to sign my first major contract 35 years ago. "Sign it, Dad, and get some rest." "You've earned it," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. His touch felt not like a son's, but like an owner's, encouraging a tired worker. I didn't sign. I told him I'd do it in the morning, with a clear head. He was a little disappointed, but didn't argue. For him, it was just a formality. He was already the king. He was just waiting for the official coronation. I slept poorly that night. I dreamt of Eleanor. She was standing on the construction site of our first project, looking at me in silence. There was no reproach in her gaze, only a sad question. "Are you sure this foundation will hold?" I woke up with a clear decision. I called my old accountant, Marcus, a man who had been with me since day one. "Marcus," I said, "I need a full, unofficial audit of the last 6 months. And I don't want anyone to know about it, especially Logan." There was silence on the other end of the line. Marcus was old school. He understood that such requests aren't made without serious reasons. "I'll do it, Wyatt," he replied. "Give me 48 hours. Those 48 hours were the longest of my life. I acted as usual. I came to the office, smiled at Logan, who had already moved into my Façade, and gave orders as if he were already the rightful owner. And he played his part. "Dad, maybe you should go fishing?" "Why are you sitting here?" he'd say, glancing impatiently at his watch. He wanted me gone. He wanted the old king to leave the castle and not interfere with the new ruler. But the old king hadn't abdicated yet. He was just waiting for news from his Secret Service. And when Marcus finally called, the ground gave way beneath my feet. Marcus didn't want to talk on the phone. His voice was hollow and tense when he said just one sentence. "Wyatt, come over. You need to see this for yourself." I realized that my worst fears were just childish anxieties compared to the reality that awaited me in his office. And I didn't know then that this was only the beginning. Marcus's office, usually cozy and calm, resembled a war room. Papers were spread all over the table, and Marcus himself, gray-haired and always unflappable, looked as if he had aged 10 years in 2 days. He didn't greet me. He just silently handed me a stack of printouts. "These are the corporate account statements," he said quietly. "Look at the expenses for the last 3 months." I started looking through them. At first, everything seemed routine. Payments to suppliers, salaries, taxes. But then I began to notice anomalies. Private jet rental to Vegas, $30,000. Entertainment expenses, Bellagio Casino, $50,000. Consulting services, Kane Enterprises, $100,000. My hands started to tremble. "Who is Kane?" I asked, though my heart already knew the answer. "Silas the Vulture Kane," Marcus replied, looking me straight in the eye. "An unofficial banker, a loan shark, a man who owns half the gambling debts in this city. He never loses, Wyatt." I sank into the chair, feeling the air leave my lungs. My son, my heir, was using company money earned by the sweat and blood of hundreds of workers, to play poker with the most dangerous men in Nevada. "That's not all," Marcus continued, handing me another folder. "These are mortgage documents. Logan, acting on a previous power of attorney you gave him, mortgaged 2 of our largest properties. He got a $5 million loan. The money is gone." $5 million. $5 million that were supposed to go to new equipment, to expansion, to bonuses for the people who had worked for us for decades. They had simply vanished into the insatiable maw of Las Vegas. "But why?" I whispered. "Why would he need that much money?" And then Marcus told me the worst part. He had contacted his old friends, conducted his own investigation. It turned out Logan wasn't just gambling. He was trying to win back his losses. He had lost a huge amount of his own money, then the company's money, and then, caught up in the thrill, he made one last, fatal bet. To understand the full picture, I needed to talk to one more person. Hank, my foreman, who had worked with me since we were digging foundations by hand. I met him that evening at an old bar on the edge of town. Hank was a man of few words, but his respect within the company was absolute. He knew everything and everyone. "I've heard things, boss," he said, staring into his glass of whiskey. "The guys are saying young Logan got in too deep, that he got involved with bad people." "What exactly are they saying, Hank?" I insisted. Hank sighed heavily. "They say there was a big game last Saturday, at a private club. Logan was there. And Silas Kane, too. They say Logan bet everything." What does everything mean? My voice was barely a whisper. "The company, boss. He gambled on Wyatt Construction, said you'd already signed it all over to him, and he could do whatever he wanted. He lost. Lost it all, down to the last nail. The world tilted around me. My son, my own flesh and blood, gambled away my life's work. He gave the company, our home, the future of hundreds of families, to a loan shark because he was too arrogant and blind to stop." "But he couldn't," I whispered. "The papers aren't signed." The company is still mine. Hank gave me a long, hard look. He doesn't think so, boss. And more importantly, Silas Kane doesn't think so. And when the vulture thinks something belongs to him, he takes it. One way or another. I returned home, devastated. Anger, pain, disappointment, it all swirled into one bitter knot. I walked through my house looking at the photographs. Here was Logan, a little boy on my shoulders. Here were Eleanor and I at the opening of our first office. All of it, every smile, every memory, had been bet and lost by one irresponsible child who thought he was a king. But then, as the first wave of pain subsided, something else replaced it. A cold, icy rage. The rage of a builder whose house is about to be demolished. The rage of a father who realized his son was sick and needed the harshest lesson of his life. Logan thought the game was over. Silas Kane thought he had won, but they hadn't counted on one thing. The old king hadn't made his last move yet. "Logan, son," I began, forcing my voice to sound tired and a little confused. "You're right. I've overstayed my welcome. It's time to finally hand things over. Let's meet at the office tomorrow, in the boardroom. Bring your lawyers, I'll have mine. We'll sign the final papers and the company is officially yours." I could hear the relief on the other end of the line. "Of course, Dad." "That's a great idea. Tomorrow at 10, I'll arrange everything." He didn't suspect a thing. His arrogance was my greatest ally. Then I made another call. Finding Silas Kane's number wasn't hard. "Mr. Kane," I said, once his bodyguard finally put me through. "My name is Wyatt Harper. I hear you've taken an interest in my company. Tomorrow at 10, the final transfer of assets will take place at my office. I think you'll want to be present to ensure everything goes smoothly. After all, it's your property now, so to speak." Kane was surprised, but intrigued. My calm confidence had disarmed him. He agreed. The trap was set. The next morning, the boardroom at Wyatt Construction looked like a stage before a grand play. Logan sat at the head of the table, in my seat, smiling smugly. Next to him sat two of his slick lawyers. At exactly 10, the door opened, and Silas Kane walked in with two of his bodyguards, who looked like mountains. The air in the room instantly thinned. Logan paled when he saw Kane but quickly composed himself, deciding this was somehow part of his own brilliant plan. I was the last to enter. Not in a suit, but in my old work jeans and a flannel shirt. I didn't sit. I stood at the end of the table near the large window overlooking the city I had helped build. "Well," Logan began, rubbing his hands together impatiently. "Dad, thanks for coming. Here are the final documents. Your signature goes right here, and we're done." He slid the same folder toward me. I looked at him, then at Kane, then back at Logan, and I said calmly, "These papers?" "What papers?" Silence fell in the room. Logan laughed nervously. "Dad, don't joke. The ones we discussed. About transferring the company." "Oh, these." I picked up the folder, not even opening it, and tossed it on the table. "They have no legal standing. It's just paper." "What do you mean?" Logan's voice began to tremble. "You said..." "I said I was going to do it. But I didn't. I haven't signed anything, Logan. Not a single document that transfers even 1% of Wyatt Construction to you. The company is, and remains, 100% mine." Logan's face turned into a mask of horror. He looked from me to Kane, who was slowly rising from his seat. But I thought..." I told him. Yes, you did. My voice turned hard as steel. You lied, Logan. You took money that didn't belong to you. You mortgaged property you had no right to, and you gambled away something that was never yours to begin with. What does this mean, Harper? Kane's voice boomed. His piercing eyes locked onto me. It means, Mr. Kane, that my son is a fraud who deceived you. He sold you air. You have no claim on my company. And if your men set foot on any of my properties, I will call the police. Kane slowly turned to Logan. You, kid. You played me? I thought he would sign. Logan screamed, shrinking back in his chair. I was sure of it. I don't care what you thought. Kane grabbed Logan by his jacket and lifted him. You owe me $5 million, and the company, and you will give it to me, or I'll take it out of your hide. Kane's bodyguards moved forward. Logan's lawyers hid under the table, and at that moment, I stepped forward. Put him down, Kane, I said calmly. Kane looked at me. Stay out of this, old man. This is between me and your worthless son. No, I replied. Now this is between you and me. He is my son, and his debts, unfortunately, are my problem. I will pay you back your $5 million, not all at once, but I will draw up a payment schedule. But you will not get the company. Ever. Kane stared at me for a long time. He could see I wasn't joking, and I wasn't afraid. He saw a man protecting what was his. Finally, he let Logan go, who collapsed to the floor. Fine, Harper. You have 24 hours to bring me the first installment and a signed schedule. Otherwise, I'll forget we had this conversation. He turned and walked out, leaving a chilling trail of fear behind him. I looked at my son crying on the floor. He was broken, humiliated, terrified. But the lesson was just beginning. The next morning, I woke Logan up at 5. He was sleeping in his old childhood room, curled up like a frightened boy. He looked pathetic, but pity was a luxury I couldn't afford. Get dressed, I said, tossing a set of old work clothes onto his bed. Faded jeans, a thick shirt, and heavy steel-toed boots. The truck is waiting. Where are we going? He croaked. To work, I replied curtly. We arrived at our largest construction site on the outskirts of the city. The sun was just beginning to rise over the mountains, painting the sky orange. The air was filled with the hum of generators and the smell of concrete. Hank, my foreman, was waiting for Marceau at the gate. He looked at Logan without a hint of sympathy. Hank, I said, meet your new general laborer. His name is Logan. He'll be here until he works off his debt. $5 million. You'll pay him minimum wage. No special treatment. No easy jobs. He works as hard as everyone else. Maybe harder. Hank nodded, his weathered face like stone. Got it, boss. I turned to Logan. His face was white with shock. Dad, you can't. I'm your son. I don't know how to do this. I ran the company. You didn't run it, you ruined it, I cut him off. You thought those numbers on paper appeared out of thin air. You thought money was just chips at a casino. Now you're going to see where it really comes from. You'll earn every dollar of that $5 million with your own 2 hands. You'll feel its weight in your tired muscles and the calluses on your palms. I handed him a hard hat and a pair of work gloves. Your first job is to strip the formwork over in that sector. Hank will show you what to do. And remember, Logan, you're not the boss's son here. You're a nobody. You have to earn the right to even be called a worker. I drove off, leaving him standing in the middle of the construction site, lost and humiliated. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. A part of me wanted to turn back, pick him up, and tell him everything would be okay. but I knew that would only prolong the sickness. Sometimes, to save someone, you have to let them hit rock bottom. The first few weeks were hell for him. He, who was used to the climate control of an office and leather chairs, was now working under the scorching Nevada sun. He carried heavy planks, mixed concrete, cleaned tools. He came home dirty, exhausted, barely able to stand. He was silent, his gaze filled with resentment and hatred. The other workers initially treated him with contempt. They knew who he was. They knew what he had done. They called him the Prince and gave him the dirtiest jobs. I watched from a distance. Hank reported to me every evening. "He's barely making it, boss. But he's not giving up. I thought he'd run off after a day, but he's sticking it out." One day I showed up at the site unannounced. I saw Logan covered in dust, trying to lift a heavy steel beam. He slipped and fell. Two workers standing nearby laughed out loud. Logan lay on the ground, and I saw his shoulders shake. He was crying. But then he wiped his face with a dirty glove, got up, and went for the beam again. This time, one of the workers, an older man named Carlos, walked over and silently helped him. Something began to change, slowly, imperceptibly. The hard physical labor was burning the arrogance out of him. He started to see the people around him. He saw how they worked, how they supported each other, how they took pride in their work. He began to understand that the company wasn't just numbers in a report. It was living people. One evening he came into the kitchen where I was having dinner. He sat down opposite me in silence. His hands were covered in fresh scratches and old calluses. "Carlos needs money for his wife's surgery," he said quietly. I heard him talking to Hank. "He doesn't know where to get it." I looked at him. For the first time in a long time, there was no anger or resentment in his eyes. There was compassion. "I know," I replied. "Can we help him?" he asked. "Can the company?" "That's not your concern, Logan," I said. "Your concern is working off your debt." He looked down, but I could see that my words had affected him. The lesson, though painful, was starting to work. He was learning to see the world not through the lens of his own desires, but through the eyes of the people he had almost destroyed. It happened on a hot August day. The crew was working on the upper floors of a new building. One of the young workers, a rookie, misstepped near the edge and started to fall. Everyone froze in horror, but Logan, who was working nearby, reacted instantly. He didn't think about his own safety. He lunged, grabbed the kid by his belt, and with incredible effort, held on until others could rush over. He saved his life. When I arrived at the site, the news had already spread. Hank met me at the gate. "Your son's a hero, boss," he said. And for the first time, I heard a note of respect in his voice. He risked himself for someone else. I found Logan sitting on a pile of cement bags drinking water. His hands were shaking. He looked up at me. "I just did what I had to do," he said. "No, son," I replied, sitting down next to him. "You did more. You acted like a man, not the prince." That evening, we talked for the first time in a long time. Not as boss and debtor, but as father and son. "I get it now, Dad," he said, looking at his calloused hands. "I understand what this company is worth. It's not built of concrete and steel. It's built of people like Hank and Carlos, of their work, their loyalty. And I almost destroyed it all. I was such a blind idiot." He apologized sincerely, not for getting caught, but for what he had done. I saw a remorse in his eyes that couldn't be faked. I saw my son, finally grown up. He continued to work on the site for almost another year. He worked off a significant portion of the debt. He earned the respect of the workers. They no longer called him the prince. They called him Logan. When the debt to Silas Kane was fully paid, I called Logan into my office. "You're free," I said. "You've paid back every dollar. You can go." He looked at me. "I don't want to go," he replied. "I want to stay. If you'll let me. I'm ready to start from the lowest position, for real. I want to learn how to build, not just count money." I thought for a long time. I remembered Eleanor's words, "A true legacy is character." My son had walked through fire and hadn't broken. He had found his character. I didn't give him his executive position back. I didn't make him my deputy. I created a new program in the company, an employee ownership program. Now, every worker, from foreman to engineer, after a certain period of service, received a share in Wyatt Construction. They became not just employees, but co-owners. They were building their own home. And Logan? He started as an assistant project manager. He had to learn everything from scratch. But now, in his eyes, there wasn't a hungry gleam, but respect. Respect for labor, for people, and for the legacy he had almost lost. Sometimes people ask me if I was too hard on my son. Maybe. But I look at my company, which has become stronger than ever. I look at my son, who has transformed from a spoiled brat into a real man. And I understand that sometimes the harshest lessons are the most valuable gifts. This isn't just a betrayal story. It's one of those grandpa stories that reminds us that a father's true love isn't about indulging weaknesses, but about fostering strength. Even if it means making your son start over from the very foundation, if this story touched you, if you believe in second chances and the power of hard lessons, please share it with someone who might need it. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Did I do the right thing? And of course, subscribe to our channel to hear more stories about family, trials, and the true values that can't be gambled away. Thank you for being with us.